Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name's Elizabeth, and today we're going to be going over an introduction into Microsoft Sharepoint, which is a shared file storage solution in the cloud. And if you were with us last week, then you'll know that we went over OneDrive, which was your personal storage solution. But this week we're going to be talking about what happens to your shared drive, and that's where Sharepoint comes in. We'll be talking about Sharepoint sites and how it kind of works in your Microsoft 365 cloud environment today. So if you remember last week, we talked about how our remote work model is changing. We have more people working from home, maybe smaller office spaces, and we see a need for cloud storage. We see a need for some of our hardware to start moving to the cloud, and that includes our shared drives, our personal drives. We have the domain controller, and we even have, but as far as Microsoft 365, how they can kind of play into this cloud environment and replace some of these applications in the cloud. We have Teams, we have Outlook, SharePoint, which would be our shared drive, OneDrive, which is our personal drive. We have Azure, which is kind of the back end. And then we have our Sync Speak phone service, which is FA kind of coming in there and helping you get everything in the cloud. But again, today we're going to be talking about Sharepoint and how that can help kind of with this remote work model, or really to allow everybody to work from anywhere securely in moving to the cloud. So we do have this kind of lingo here associated with Sharepoint. So if you're thinking about your shared drive on the server, this physical machine for your shared drive, think about it in the cloud sense. We have a site, which would be where all of your content is stored, and then that is also the shared drive. So it's just a matter of naming. We have a server, we have a site, and they are both our shared drives. And now we're going to kind of get into how a document moves through these drives, and we start in our personal drive. So this is our OneDrive. This is where we kind of create documents. We start documents here when we're, in the drafting stages of creation. And then as we're ready to share and collaborate on this document, we're going to move it to Team. And this is our collaborative drive. This is where we are making edits, we're meeting, we're talking about this document. Everybody's kind of logging in and contributing to this file here. And then once it's gone through all of the final edits and it's ready for publishing, we move it to Sharepoint. And that is the shared drive. So this is where final drafts go, templates, operational manuals, kind of read-only documents that may apply to an entire department or an entire organization. Things that really aren't meant to be edited live in Sharepoint. So that's where your final draft goes. And as you need it, if it's a template, you can take it out and then create a new draft of this document in Teams. So you're not saving over anything in Sharepoint, and start anew. You can edit this again, work on it, and then again, save it to Sharepoint for a reference. And you can think of these as libraries, reference libraries. So your OneDrive would be, draft, things that are not ready to be in circulation. And then you have Teams, which is kind of, people are taking this document in and out. A lot of hands are getting on this document. And then finally you have SharePoint, which is the reference library. You don't check it out. You can go there, reference it, and leave it alone. You start anew. So those are the three drives: OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. You can also think of these applications as buckets for information. So you have Teams, which is kind of this collaborative space again. That's where you're meeting. That's where you're, kind of giving this document from one hand to another. Then you have OneDrive, which is your personal drive, your personal storage, and SharePoint, which is your shared bucket, which is where all the final products are going. So again, just a personal, collaborative, and shared space for exchanging documents. And now we're going to get started in Sharepoint, and we're going to go over first some storage and access solutions in your shared drive. First, I do want to announce that Sharepoint does give you the ability to share documents and folders internally and externally, but while you're doing this, we do want to make sure that you're sharing responsibly, as Sharepoint may contain some sensitive company information or data. So again, we want you to share responsibly by defining, deciding, and developing some policies for your organization. So first, we want to define what confidential information is, what we don't want leaked, what we don't want shared, things that are staying internal. We want to make sure that everybody is clear on what that information is and looks like. Then we want to decide what will be stored in Sharepoint. Are we going to put this super confidential information in here? What are we using it for? definitely think about what you're putting on sites. And then if it will be used for internal sharing only, or if you do want to use this for external sharing, if this is where you kind of want to take your documents and share them externally, you definitely want to develop some policies for that as well. And then that's where develop comes in. You're going to develop these policies for sharing and storing in SharePoint, so everybody's on the same page to keep your site clean, to keep your site search friendly, and easy for everybody to access and store their documents in there. So that's a little bit on that. And I do want to mention some limitations that you'll encounter while using SharePoint. And the first one is that any database application must be kept on a server. So things like QuickBooks, Sage, Razor's Edge, FileMaker, things like that have to be kept on a server. And the second thing is that if you are not connected to the internet, you will not have access to SharePoint, as it is based in the browser. It is an online application. So there is a way to sync, which we'll go over later, so that you can access when you don't have Wi-Fi certain libraries, but we'll get into that a little bit. But for the most part, you do want to make sure that you do have a secure connection to the internet. Now a little bit about accessing SharePoint. There are 3 ways that we're going to go over today to access your SharePoint site. The first one is Teams. This is the way that we like to access SharePoint here at F8. And you're going to go into a team from Microsoft Teams. You're going to go into a team and you're going to click on this little button at the top under Files. You'll go under Files and you'll click Open in SharePoint. And the other way that you can do it is from the chat. You'll go to the top of the chat here in Teams and you'll click on the little plus sign at the top of your screen. And you're just going to select an add-in, which would be the document library, and you'll select which document library you'd like to have access to through Teams, which is a great integration, a really great way to quickly go between apps. You don't even have to leave. So the next way is through OneDrive, and you'll have to sync your library in order to do this. And we'll go over how to do that in just a little bit. And then you'll be able to see here, if you remember from last week at our last Lunch and Learn, we went over our OneDrive screen and this was the shared libraries. Well, here you have it. Now we're accessing them through OneDrive, and anything that you sync there will show up under these shared libraries, and those are SharePoint sites. And the last way is by going to office.com, and this way you can access any online applications. So this is a good way if you want to access any web version of these applications. It's a quick way to go to office.com. You'll have to log in probably the first time with your Microsoft information, and then you'll be able to launch SharePoint from there. And if you have multiple sites going on, you'll see them all. You can kind of navigate that way and choose where you want to go from SharePoint. So those are the 3 ways that you're going to access sites in SharePoint. The next thing that we are going to go over is to start how to start a document in SharePoint. You can begin documents and folders in a document library. So that's where you're going to want to do this. We don't recommend that you start from SharePoint. We do recommend that you kind of place it in SharePoint once it's done. But if for any reason, if you want to create a folder, let's say, you can do that in SharePoint, and this is how you'll do it. So you'll go to your SharePoint site, whichever one you want to start the document in, and at the top of the document library, at the bottom right hand of your screen, you will see New. And when you click on that, you'll just select the document that you want to create and begin. You can start a folder or start a document, and that will bring you to the web version of the application, just so you know when you want to start a document there. And then to open a document in SharePoint in these document libraries, it's a very simple process again, by going to the SharePoint site, by accessing them by one of the 3 ways that we went over. You're going to go to a SharePoint site, and at the bottom, again, you're going to open the document library by clicking See All. And when you click on that button, it will take you to this screen, and you'll select the document by checking the little circle next to the document there. You'll select the document, and then you'll click Open. And from there, you can decide if you'd like to open that document in the browser or in the application. And then that's a good way to decide where you want to begin working. For example, in Excel, it's maybe sometimes easier to work in the desktop application. You need the full functionality of that application in most cases. So then it would be a time where you would open in the desktop app and then make sure to save to SharePoint once you are finished. And I just now want to talk a little bit about the differences between working in the browser and the desktop application when you are opening from SharePoint and opening those documents. So if you are deciding to stay in the web application or the web version of these applications, you will be able to save to SharePoint automatically. When you open, as you're working, it will sync automatically back to SharePoint, which is a great way to make sure you're not losing any work. All parties, if you are collaborating on a document and you are working in the browser version, all parties will see the changes as they occur. If you're working on Word or online, you will see, if everybody's in the document, you'll be able to see everybody in there when they're in the browser, which is great. And then you can upload an existing document or start a new one in the browser. So just like the desktop app, you don't lose any functionality that way. You can choose to open it. And then in the browser, great thing, you can create a shareable link. So super easy to share from the browser. The application, the good thing about the application is, again, you do have that full capability and functionality of the app. And at the top of the screen, you'll have that little floppy disk, and that is the sync save button. So as you're working, if you wanted to sync to the SharePoint site, you have to click on that sync save button, and then it will sync back to the SharePoint site to see those changes as they're happening. It does take a little bit. It's not as instantaneous as working in the browser, so you do want to have a little patience if you are working in different applications. But you can have somebody open the document in the application and another in the browser, so you can still collaborate. It's not going to restrict your access if one person is working in the application and another in the browser. And then you can also choose which files you want stored on SharePoint from the application. If you start in the application, you can choose whether or not you want to store this directly to SharePoint or not. The only thing is that you cannot create a shareable link as you would be able to do in the browser. However, in both, you have the ability to work again on the same document at the same time on either platform. There's no restricted access. You can have it open as many times as you'd like in the browser and in the desktop application. Next, we're going to go over collaborating in SharePoint. So this is seamless integration for secure collaboration and storage in SharePoint. You can share a document from SharePoint here, and this is how you do it. First, you select the document you want to share, and then you will select share, the button at the top there. And there are 3 ways that you can share from here. You have 3 options to share. The first one is to type in the name or the email address of the person you'd like to share this document with. You also have the option to copy the link, and this is great if you'd like to send it in Teams or if you'd like to send it in an email. However, you can also just click the Outlook button if you'd like to send this link in an email. So that's an easy way to do it. And we do have a security alert. It's not really a training if we don't have a word on security. By clicking this button where it says people in your organization with the link can edit, you can edit the permissions on the document from here in link settings. So we at F8 use SharePoint just for internal collaboration. So if yours looks like this, your link settings where you cannot click anyone with the link can edit this document, that means that you only have internal sharing capabilities, and that's fine. However, some of you will be able to share this externally, but these are the kind of settings either way that you can apply to your link. So if you have allow editing checked, then the person who receives this document will be able to edit it. However, you can uncheck this and it will become read-only, and then you can even go as far as blocking a download, so they won't be able to download the document once you send it to them. So it's really just for reading, and that's it. So that's the security alert. Make sure that you apply the proper settings when you are sharing documents from your SharePoint. And now collaborating in SharePoint, you can, again, the greatest feature, working together and simultaneously on the same document. This is what it looks like. So when you are working together, you can see who's in the document, and you're going to open the document for editing in Office on the web. So when you go to open at the top of your screen, you're going to want to select open in Word Online. So here we have the Word document, and you see zoomed in there, Garth is working in there with us. It's going to look smaller, of course, when you're working. I just have it zoomed in so you can see what that will look like in there. From there, you can chat, you can see where they are in the document with their little flags popping up so you don't step on any toes while you're editing. So that's what it looks like when you're in there in the Office version. And then of course you see at the top there, you do have the option to open in the desktop app from here. So if you choose no longer to edit in here, you can of course just take it to the desktop app. No problem. And just a little note on this, you only get an instant sync when all parties are in the web app. So again, you do want to make sure that if you want to see all the changes as they're happening in real time, that you are all working in the same place in the browser. So here we have the syncing and syncing files. This is great for if you know that you won't be connected to Wi-Fi, you can sync them to your device for integrated access, and it also to OneDrive, which you are able to access through your device. And this is how you do it. You go to the document library where you'd like to sync files from, and at the top you'll click the sync button. Very straightforward. You'll sign into your OneDrive account, which is the same Microsoft information that you have for your work, business, OneDrive for Business. And then once you're signed in, your document library will begin to sync to OneDrive. And then from there, you'll be able to see your files under OneDrive organization name, and then you'll see the different libraries and you'll be able to access it from there. Super simple. You do want to make sure though that once you are signed back onto Wi-Fi, that you do allow that time to sync back to the SharePoint site. And now taking collaboration a step further, we're going to talk about integration between Teams and SharePoint. And in F8's opinion, we just go go better together. There's some seamless integration here for secure collaboration and storage, and we're going to talk about this, and we'll talk about this in a future training, which I hope to see you at. But this is just a taste of what's to come. We're going to kind of talk about how Teams is the hub here for starting documents and collaborating on them, because the integration between Teams and SharePoint is a really cool and exciting one, especially for collaborating and then saving documents. So to start a document in Teams, it's very simple. You'll go to the channel where you want to start a document. So under your team, you have different channels, and you'll go to the channel where you'd like to start the document, and then you'll go to the top, you'll click on new, and then you'll choose what kind of document you'd like to start. Here we chose a Word document, so we'll name our document here Scooby Snacks, of course under Mystery Machine Inc. We'll name the document Scooby Snacks, and then we'll see the recipe come up there, and you can begin working, editing. Maybe you come up with something better, more butter or something, and you can edit the document from there, and it will sync back and forth between the SharePoint site. And again, here we do have the ability to open it in the desktop app. A note on starting documents in Teams is that only the documents you create or upload in Teams will continue to appear in Teams. So if you are starting documents in the SharePoint site, it's not going to sync unless you add it in as a document library, and then you'll be able to access that library. So just a little word on that. If you really do want that seamless sync, you want to start in the team, in Microsoft Teams, and start documents there to kind of really have that integration. So viewing your files in SharePoint and in Microsoft Teams, I want to take a closer look at this. In SharePoint, you see the demo site, and then we have general, which is the folder, and then all the documents. I want you to look here. The demo, we have the demo team here, which is the site over here. And then we are in general, the general channel, and here it is a folder. And we see all these documents are exactly the same, and they will sync. So that's the view, and that's how seamless it really is between SharePoint and Teams. So I want to show you kind of the movement of that document quickly here. Again, this is just a taste of what's to come in the future. And the first thing that I want to talk about is when you create a team in Microsoft Teams, this is kind of the breakdown. When you create a team in Microsoft Teams, it creates a SharePoint team site. So when you have a team here, demo, we see that in Microsoft SharePoint, it does have this site now, demo. And it's a private group, but I want you to really pay attention to this general folder, because this is the next step, and that is that we see here that it is the general channel. And when you create channels, they create folders. So files shared in Teams will sync to your team site in its corresponding channel folder. So we just saw how there was the general file in SharePoint, and to add these kind of files, you just have to add channels, and that's super simple. You just go to the ellipses and you add channels right from there. So we added a few channels. We added Mystery Machine Inc. and Snack Food Inc. So these are our new channels in Teams, and that is going to create folders in Microsoft SharePoint. So let's look here. First we saw general, now we see I created a channel, Mystery Machine Inc. And here we see it, we're in this folder in demo, and we created a file here in Teams called Unsolved Mysteries. So now if we go to open in SharePoint from here, from this screen, we see that we are in the demo site still, because we created a channel in the demo team. We see that we are in the folder Mystery Machine, because that is the channel that we created. And we see the document that we created in Teams as well, Unsolved Mysteries. So that is the taste of the future. That is the taste of the integration. Just if you would like a larger and longer explanation, you can check out our future training, which will cover Teams as the hub and why this is such a great way to kind of create documents and work on documents this way. And so to really drive this home, I'm going to go through the document life cycle as a use case. So I want you to think about this document now as a proposal or a grant, RFP or a bid, things like that. You start in your personal drive, right? You draft up something to share with your team. And then once you have that ready, you're going to collaborate on it in Teams. You're going to share it with your team there. You're going to go over it, make sure that everything looks good, and then finally you're going to save it in a file in SharePoint. And this is where you can use it as a template, you can reference it, you can look back and kind of remember what you guys were talking about. And then if you need to edit it, you can have your department head or whoever has that permission kind of take it out, put it back in Teams for you guys to work on, go through it, and then again once more put it in SharePoint for reference and to save. You really only want to take that out. So again, the movement of a document from your personal drive through Teams in the collaborative space, and then of course SharePoint, which would be your shared drive for published documents that are ready for use. And that is it. That is SharePoint. That is your shared drive solution in the cloud. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at webinars@faconsulting.com. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope you stay safe, and I hope you join us for our next training on the Microsoft Teams Hub, which I'm really excited to get into with you guys. Again, thanks for joining us. I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.